Okay, y'all. So back again with this doozy. Now this is going to be about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr. Now I'm gonna give you some history real fast from my life and some perspective from that, and then I'm gonna get into the substance of the video. So growing up in Brooklyn, obviously going to school, the public school system, every February, it's re-indoctrination month for all the blacks, where you have to be told that, you were a slave, you came from slaves, and pretty much everyone that tried to fight it got killed. And then there was one person that didn't try to fight, just tried to be peaceful about it. He got killed too. And he was really, really good. Which I always said to myself, if he was so damn good, then why the hell did they shoot him? When I was a kid. And obviously we had streets names after a lot of affluent blacks in Brooklyn. For instance, we have Malcolm X, we have Martin Luther King. I think there's Martin Luther King Boulevard or whatever, the street, avenue in every goddamn city. But anyway, in the city, I knew a lot about Martin Luther King, growing up. And I've heard about Malcolm X, obviously, the street name. And then, sometimes people will graffiti hit him on the side of buildings and stuff like that. But when it came to school, when it came to just life, there was no emphasis on Malcolm X. So I didn't know much about Malcolm X for quite a while until I was older. My mom had bought the movie Malcolm X. Now, she had already seen it, but she had bought it just to have for her own personal collection. And growing up, my mom used to always make my brothers and I, watch all different types of movies. And her aim with that was to give us culture. So, yeah, she made us watch tons of movies. I can't even think of them right now. And I remember she made us watch a lot of freaking foreign films, too, which I think was a great thing. Looking back at the time, I was like, what the hell is this? I don't want to watch this. A lot of stuff was in black and white, so you already know I wasn't with that. But anyway, when I saw the movie Malcolm X starring Denzel Washington as Malcolm X and directed by none other than Spike Lee, that movie did a great job of encapsulating the type of person that Malcolm X was. Now, obviously, it can only do so much because it is a film, and he's dead. So it's not like they could speak to him and, get all that information from him. But Spike Lee did a great job of getting, like information from people that knew him and things like that. So if you haven't seen the movie, definitely it's a must watch. Again, that's Malcolm X. I think the movie might just be called X though. But either way, it's starring Denzel Washington. And in that movie, I learned a lot about Malcolm X. I learned a lot about the Nation of Islam that I never heard about until watching that movie. And I'm trying to remember what age I was. Maybe I was like 13, maybe 14. Definitely before high school, I seen that movie. But either way, it's like, imagine that movie never came out. I probably, now I would know because I read a lot and I'm super inquisitive about, that era. But, who the hell knows when I would have found out more about him. And if you ask me, between the two of them, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X had it right. Now, am I saying that the religion aspect of it was right? No, not necessarily. I'm not a Muslim. So, I can't sit here and say that was correct or he was correct in that. But he was so righteous in the way he moved. And for first and foremost, for those of you that don't know him or that don't know anything about him for that matter, Malcolm X started out as like, actually, before I even get into that, Malcolm X's parents were Garveyites. And the Garveyite a Garveyite was followers of Marcus Garvey. Now, a Garveyite would be someone that follows the doctrine of Marcus Garvey, so the things that what he stood for. So yes, there are Garveyites out there today. Dr. Umar Johnson proclaims himself to be one. And I myself, there's a lot of things that I take away from what Marcus Garvey said and tried to accomplish, and I try to implement that in my quest to the betterment of quote unquote black people. But with that being said, Malcolm X's parents were Garveyites. Now, Malcolm X's father was murdered when Malcolm was young, I believe, by some Klansmen. They tried to say that, he fell on the train tracks, whatever the case may be. But it's widely believed that the Klan had got him because they knew who he was and what he stood for. And then the mother, she had, pretty much broke down after that and went crazy. So she was put into a facility. And then the kids were all separated. Malcolm went through, like the whole, not orphanage, but like foster care and things like that. Then he, was running the streets, selling drugs, doing drugs, dating white women, getting into all sorts of trouble. Then he got arrested. And now when he was in prison, he met this guy that introduced him to the Quran and the Nation of Islam. When Malcolm got out, he went and, enrolled in the Nation of Islam and worked his way up to become the speaker of the Nation of Islam, which was the speaker for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, Elijah Muhammad, and don't get me wrong, I have a lot of criticisms about the Nation of Islam, but one thing that I can say about the Nation of Islam is whatever you think about how they, the bean pies or like the bow ties and some of their doctrine, what they preach, outside of all of that, they do very well for, the brothers that are incarcerated and when they get out. Because these guys, they come out and they pretty much have a complete 180 on their life. And that's a great thing. If that's all the NOI has to offer, that's still a great thing, especially considering that the number of black men in prison is crazy. It's good to know that there is a group out there that is thinking about them and not only helps them, turn their life around, but makes them back into contributing members of society. So, yeah, I just want to get that out there because I know the NOI gets a bad rep, and I'm not all too fond of them most times, but, I have to give credit where credit is due. So anyway, Malcolm went all the way up, and he was self-taught, by reading, but not self-taught. Actually, I can't tell you to say that. Elijah Muhammad taught him a lot, but Malcolm X was, again, very eager to learn and know more. So following with Elijah Muhammad was for the separation of the races. He wanted to have the blacks not segregate and just stay separate, and he wanted the U.S. government to supply them their own land and pretty much subsidize them for, I think it was like 20 or 25 years, something like that, which never happened, obviously. But that's what they were about. And again, I'm for that. If, like, for instance, if my friends are going somewhere to a party and the host of the party doesn't like me and doesn't want me there, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to just go anyway and say, well, fuck it. I know this person don't like me here, yada, yada, but I'm just going to go anyway. Because you know what happens then? You wind up going there and then some shit pops off. And if some shit pops off, you can't be surprised because, you already knew the person didn't like you and damn sure didn't want you in their house. So, that's why when I look at what was going on back in the 60s and then how black people even back then and today seem to be incredulous to it, like, oh my God, what? Why all this emotion? Why all this negativity and hatred and racism? They done told you they don't like you. They told you they don't like you. Like even now with President Trump, he was like, oh, Trump divided the country. Listen, you can't divide something that's already been divided. All right? The shit was already divided. He didn't divide it. What he did was he allowed the divisions to become more distinct. He didn't divide it. It was already divided. And not for nothing, I prefer it like this. I prefer, there's militiamen in these states and here, and they're open carrying, and they're unapologetically, pro-white and stuff like that. Hey, knock yourself out, man. Thank you for letting me know. I'm gonna stay out your way. You stay out of mine. And then, I just keep on moving. Because again, I said this before, I'm gonna keep saying it. When you're moving with a purpose, you're not going to be worried about this bullshit anyway. You really won't. There's bigger issues that are affecting your day-to-day for you to accomplish your goals. And again, that's not me saying that racism doesn't exist, because racism doesn't exist. I already did a video on that, okay? It's not about race, it's about power. Racism is a made-up construct that came out post 1500s. Okay. So again, white is not a race, black is not a race. So yes. So anyway, back to the Martin Luther King, Malcolm X thing. So yeah, Martin, he wanted to obviously, integrate with the white people and be able to go to schools with them, be able to live amongst them and stuff like that. And he adopted this pacifist, nonviolent approach that he had got from Mahatma Gandhi. Now, if you don't know who Mahatma Gandhi is, he was like a leader during the British Inquisition of India back in the early 1800s, I believe, maybe mid 1800s. Don't quote me on that. And he was, nonviolent, like don't attack the British. Let's just, do nothing kind. And I think he was like even like they were holding like all different kind of protests where they wouldn't eat, they wouldn't move and stuff like that. But so yeah, he adopted that from Gandhi, and that was his approach. If they sick the dogs on us, we're not going to bite back. We're not going to shoot back. We're not going to fight back. Yada yada yada. We're just going to get locked up and stuff like that. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that, man. I'm just going to call it like it is. I don't agree with that, man. But then again, most people don't know this, but Martin Luther King, he was in cahoots with some communist people, and he was pretty much like the figurehead behind a push for communism. Now, I know some people are aware that J. Edgar Hoover, who was the FBI director back in that time, he had marked Malcolm X, and he had marked Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. He had marked all of them, at one point in time. And the thing with that is, him marking Martin was because he knew that Martin was, talking with communist people, because obviously J. Edgar Hoover was all over the communists. J. Edgar Hoover wrote a book called Masters of Deceit, where he goes deeply in on communism and how it began and how it got over here to the U.S. and what it looked like back in that day. And I recommend that book. But anyway, so he knew that Martin was, delving into that sphere. So that's why he was watching him closely. Martin, did he know that he was being, used for communist gains and Marxist gains? I'm sure he did to a degree, but, he probably was like, I want to better my people, so I got to do what I got to do. So I can't get into, his motives behind the things that he did. I do know that he loved the white women, and there's nothing wrong with that, but he definitely loved himself some white women. And there's many accounts of him when he would be overseas or just like out of state doing different things, of him running around hotel rooms with white women and stuff like that. And again, I have no problem with that. Obviously, most of you know I'm married to a Caucasian woman. But obviously he wasn't being fully transparent in that regard. But anyway, back to Malcolm. Malcolm was for obviously separation and picking ourselves up by our bootstraps and being self-sufficient. And that is what I'm for today. I think that's the only way for us to get equality. Well, actually, not equality. I went over this too. There's no such thing as equality. And we shouldn't be worried about equality. But it's the only way for us to better our lives, where we can have a higher quality of life at a higher percentage. A higher percentage of us can have a higher quality of life. That's my goal, because that's the only thing we can ask for at the end of the day. Because, again, this racism stuff is power, okay? And we don't have any power. So we have to start getting some power. And the way we do that is through economics. And as I said before many times, Dr. Claude Anderson has written many books about group economics, which a book like that should be in the house of every single quote-unquote black person. And we really need to get on that, because, like, again, that's the only way that we can liberate ourselves. Okay, we cannot be liberated by the liberals or the left. That is not their goal, to liberate us. Okay, it has to be our goal to liberate ourselves, and we have to do for self. So obviously, Malcolm was of the mindset of, if you hit me, I'm gonna hit you back. I have a right to defend myself, which as men and women, we do have the right to defend ourselves, and we should defend ourselves. Not saying you should go looking for trouble, which what I would say Martin Luther King and them were doing, They were going out looking for trouble. If you go places that people don't want you there, you're looking for trouble. Now, if the people come to you, they encroach upon you, and then you defend yourself, that's well within your right. So for the most part, the NOI, they weren't going out there trying to force themselves into the communities that didn't want them. They were trying to get out. And I have my own questions about that too, because I do think that if Elijah Muhammad really wanted to separate, then he freaking could have. You know what I mean? He had a big enough following that he definitely could have. They could have moved out from the city to a suburb outside the city, and everybody could have bought up the areas around it, and they could have been their own little self-functioning organization. I mean, they are already a self-functioning organization, but they could have done more, outside of the large cities, because obviously in the cities there's not much real estate that you can buy, that you would even be allowed to buy, because obviously these quote unquote Caucasian bankers and stuff like that, investment guys, they're not going to allow a group of blacks to just come in and start buying up prime real estate in these big cities. So I do think that if Elijah Muhammad really wanted to do what he said he wanted to do, I think that he would have done it. Even to today, the NOI has not done that. So again, that leads me to that leaves me with some questions. But anyway, back to the point about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I'm not trying to sit here and say that Martin Luther King was a bad guy at all. I'm not. What I'm saying, all I'm trying to do is point out that the narrative that they teach you is just that, it's narrative. Okay. Now everyone's flawed. We're humans, so I'm not trying to shine a huge light on the flaws of Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther King was flawed, and Malcolm X was the one that was more righteous. He said what he believed, and he backed it up, and he was willing to die for it. He knew that he was going to be killed, and that's crazy. They had already tried killing him several times. So the fact that he was still out there trying to accomplish his goal, because he had that much confidence in himself and belief in himself. And belief is a word that I'm going to have to keep chiming in on. And I used that in my last video about communism, but it's so strong. You have to believe in self. And also, it'd be great if you could believe in something higher than yourself. But at the very least, you have to believe in yourself. Be confident in who you are, and then your life will be that much greater. I guarantee it. So I'm going to read a little bit more about Martin Luther King here. Some things. All right. So in my video about communism, I spoke about the different ways that you can spot communist groups and stuff like that. Now here it says in 1968, King was planning a national occupation of Washington, D.C. to be called the Poor People's Campaign when he was assassinated. Now this Poor People's Campaign, guarantee you, was the socialist movement. I know that by the time of his death, and the main reason why they killed him was because that, not because of what he was doing with the integration, but for what he was trying to do with the workers' unions. He was working with the workers' unions to get them better rights and stuff like that. Basically, moving them more towards a socialist style of working. Now, obviously, the government wasn't going for that. Allegedly, I'm not sitting here implicating the government in the assassination of Martin Luther King. So I will not do that. But allegedly, they would not have any of that. So obviously, he was taken out. Now, any more about Martin Luther King that I want to read? No, not really. Here's a photo of him. For those who don't know, Mahatma Gandhi. For those of you who don't know who Gandhi is, click on this, give you a little photo of him. Oh, and again, Gandhi was racist as hell. Now that I'm looking at him, he was racist as hell. He did not like black people. So, yeah, kind of interesting that his approach was adopted by a black man. But, yeah, he did not like black people. Sorry, I'm just looking at some stuff right here about Gandhi. But anyway, we have to, obviously, they're not going to tell us our history. Now, that's what they're supposed to be doing every February. But then they don't go into detail about Malcolm X and they never talk about Marcus Garvey. I'm going to have to do a video on Marcus Garvey just himself alone. I'll probably do that when I'm done reading the philosophies of Marcus Garvey, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Right now, I'm like halfway through, but I don't want to say it's a tough read, but it's not like it's not linear. It's literally just, excerpts from speeches and different things that he wrote and some poems and stuff like that. So it's all just kind of like just put together where you kind of just read and that's it. So I kind of read it here and there, but I've watched documentaries on him and many documentaries on him, and I heard one or two of his speeches because obviously he was doing this stuff back in like the 1920s. So back in that time they didn't really have great recording tools and things of that nature. So very hard to come across stuff like that for him. But Marcus Garvey, he was definitely a righteous dude that meant well and was actually trying to get some things accomplished. But yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there on that one. We have to educate ourselves. It's pretty much where I'm going with this. Because if you allow them to educate you, you're not going to be educated. You're just going to be indoctrinated into believing what the hell they want you to believe, and that's not where we need to be. And if you didn't know what I just told you today in this video, then we got a long way to go before we can all be on the same page with what I'm trying to do for us with our group economics, because it takes a level of understanding, what we're trying to accomplish, why we're trying to accomplish, and how we're going to accomplish it. We have to, we have to not be blinded, okay, and have our eyes covered. So anyway, that's it on that. Maybe I'll do a part 2 on this to go a little bit deeper in the future, but I just wanted to get something out about it in the meantime. So, peace.